Hello there, I'm Rafael de Furia, back at it again on another Friday night for another episode of Not Your Average Globetrotter. And this Friday night, I wanted to talk about so far my thoughts on living here in Portugal after a month, because I have just hit that point earlier this week. So actually, by the time this comes out, it will have been more than a month, just ever so slightly. And of course, to compare and contrast with some of my experiences having lived in Italy for just shy of the past 5 years. But of course, a huge thank you to those of you who helped to make episodes like this possible through Patreon, rafaeldefuria.com/Patreon or patreon.com/rafaeldefuria. Thank you also very much for helping to make these episodes possible, as well as to those of you who've helped to make these episodes possible through one-time donations and the shirts, mugs, onesies, and more that you can find below the video on YouTube or through shop.rafaeldefuria.com. What I can say after having been here in Braga, Portugal for my first month of actually living here, like I've spent a little bit of time in Portugal and more in the south, down in the Algarve, and beautiful, completely different. Could not be more different than to what you find up here. I mean, granted, of course, it's Portugal, so you do find some similarities, but of course, based on its history, there are some differences. But it's kind of funny, for years, literally years, I've joked around with friends, well, you know, if I didn't live in Italy, or if I didn't plan to live in Italy, Portugal would be where I would want to live. But I always said it as a joke, because why would I want to leave Italy? Why would that be something that would happen? And of course, due to my family situation, for better or for worse, I had to move here. So what can I say? I mean, actually, all in all, I'm so grateful that I get to experience what this place is like, because I don't think I would have left Italy otherwise. And especially being at a youngish kind of age and at a point in my life where I'm still single and have a lot of flexibility in my life, I'm really grateful that I am able to put this idea together of what might really be the appropriate place for me to live. What I can say, though, so far in my experience here is that I absolutely love living here. But just some of the differences that I've noticed. I'll talk a little bit about it now at this part of the episode, but then also later on about, in many ways, it feels as though the Portuguese are a little bit more laid back than Italians. Like I said, it kind of comes in a few different ways, but the first way I want to talk about is how people dress here. In Italy, I don't know how to say it exactly, but there was always this feeling like you have to dress up a little bit more. You have to make sure that you are really keeping with the times and to dress with the latest Italian trends. Here in Portugal, okay, you don't have to feel like you're keeping up with the Italian trends because you're not in Italy, but people are a bit more relaxed about how they dress here. Even I've seen grown adults wearing sweatpants here. Kind of surprised about that. And it wasn't a fashion statement like it might be in Italy, where it was kind of keeping up with the trends and the streetwear of what's going on these days. But it was people who were just wearing sweatpants to wear sweatpants, which was, I almost have to say, a little refreshing to see, even though I don't think I could ever do that with my life. I think that is just a life decision that I don't think I could. No, not for me. But jokes aside, one other thing I've noticed about the way that people dress here is that there seems to be a lot more subdued colors, a lot more browns, blacks, navy blues, darker colors. Not that in Italy people are wearing such bright, loud colors, but I would say in my experience in Italy, it feels as though there are more people who you might see wearing a splash of color or a pop of color. Like, that doesn't feel like it's as much out of place as what I've seen here so far. And also, again, this is kind of talking about my experience down in the Algarve as well. Granted, that was many years ago, but it's still, there's that thread of similarity that I said that ties these places together that I have seen so far. Even I noticed this immediately when I was in the airport because I had to catch a connection in Lisbon. There are direct flights, but just for the way I was getting here, there was a connection. It made life easier. But I noticed the way that people were dressed in the Italian airport versus how people were dressed in the airport here was like completely different, night and day difference. Another aspect in how different I've seen people dress here is in regards to scarves. I've almost not seen anybody wearing scarves so far. And we've had some cold days, don't get me wrong. It is warmer here than where I was living before, but still, even there gets to be a certain point when the weather is no longer warm after summer. Summer's officially over on the calendar, that people just pull out the puffy jackets and the scarves, and it is puffy jacket season officially. Here, I don't feel like I've seen as many of those puffy jackets, and definitely not scarves. Even though there have been a number of times where, for me, just for my own comfort, even though I do tend to run a little bit warm, that I do like to wear a scarf when there's a little bit of a chilly breeze out. But so far, even on those days, nothing. On cold days, maybe a couple of scarves maximum so far. Again, this is just my first month here. But of course, this is very likely connected to the climate. But even then, like when we're talking about if you had the same temperature in both places, I would say I've seen Italians dressing a bit more like it's winter time than here. But again, on this topic of climate, where I lived in Italy before moving here was further north than here in Braga. Even though I am like very far north in the country, I would say probably, without looking at a map or anything, it probably lines up somewhere between Rome and Florence as far as how far up it is on the globe. Like I was saying, there have been days so far where it's barely been even sweater weather here. There have been some cold days where you need to wrap up and bundle up, but even in Rovigo, there have been some nights that have gone below 0 centigrade, so below 32 Fahrenheit, and it's been nice and sunny and warm here. I mean, there have been times so far where I haven't even had to think about heat or even having my window open. There have been times in Italy where even imagining to have my window open was like absurd. It was crazy to even consider that. But there have been a couple times where it was actually like nice and really warm and really sunny out, that it just seemed like a more realistic option rather than in Italy. I felt as though I would really only end up opening the windows really from spring until the end of summer, and that was about it. Another thing that I was surprised about, kind of on a similar topic to climate, is about the air here. It just feels so much cleaner. And even when I was years ago down in the south of Portugal, the air there was very clean. And I'll never forget the first time as a kid coming to Europe, and you fly over, I think, like a certain part of Spain, and then all of a sudden you just see this like haze that kind of hangs out all around southern Europe. It feels like it goes from Spain to France to Italy. Even I've seen it like kind of as far as Greece and a little bit into the Middle East. And there's just this haze that hangs out. But then I've had the experience of flying over the Alps, and you just see this haze kind of stopped at that point, and north of that point, you don't really see it as much. But out here in Portugal, the air just feels like it's just blowing by. It's fresh. And even there are times, even though I'm a bit inland, where it kind of feels like this almost sea breeze that comes by. I mean, even there are seagulls here. I haven't seen seagulls in I don't know how many years, but I've been walking through the town and I was like, oh, that's a seagull. But wait, I'm in a city, inland, in Portugal. But anyway, I mean, because growing up, like being by the ocean on the West Coast, like seeing a seagull wasn't that big of a deal because large bodies of water are very close by. Not that they're so far from here, but again, just one of those little funny, little interesting things that I've seen. And of course, this is not scientific in any way, just what I've seen with my own eyes. But of course, even when we're comparing it to Italy, the north of the country is going to be cooler than the south, but I would say that goes in more than just one way. I mean, probably also the people, you could probably say, would be as well. But something that I was a bit extra surprised about here in Portugal was that people almost seemed a bit more warm and more welcoming of people from other places. I've been shocked by that. In Italy, it's a mixed bag, but there are many times that I've seen people being very unwelcome that are not from there, even if you are of Italian descent and you have Italian citizenship, blah, blah, blah. Simply because you're not from there, that can lead to some situations where you may not be as welcome. Even if you're from a different part of the country, if you're still not one of the locals, like I said, I've seen some interesting situations. But in Portugal, as far as I'm aware, they have a much longer history of having people come into the country for tourism, for trade, as well as even just their own people going out to other parts of the world. The Portuguese navigators and all the ships that they sent around the world. I mean, we're talking about a very intercontinental society, or at least connected society, from a lot earlier of a stage than a lot of other parts of Europe. And even you see that how it's influenced the country today, partially through the people, but also through the culture and cuisine. But on the topic of cuisine, oh my goodness, something that may horrify some of you who've been watching Not Your Average Globetrotter for a while and tuning in, I do actually have to say that I almost somewhat prefer Portuguese cuisine to Italian. Don't get me wrong, I love Italian food. But if we're talking about comparing and contrasting, there's part of me that almost prefers Portuguese food just that little bit more. But even with that said, there are some things that are Italian that are, I would say, part of my diet, or at least part of what I eat on a anywhere from regular to semi-regular basis. Cold cuts. Not something I eat generally a ton of or even often, but recently I was feeling like having some salame. And that is something that I can say that Italy does almost better. They're just king when it comes to that. Although when it comes to like the hams and some of that here, they do give Italy a run for their money. But there are some of the things here that in Portugal, like in Italy, there are certain things that I wouldn't ever imagine eating there. Horse on pizza. I feel like I've been mentioning that too much recently. But yeah, that's something. Or they also do eat rabbit here. That's something that in both countries is not abnormal, but I've never heard about people eating horse here. Maybe that's just something I haven't encountered yet, and I hope I don't. But in Portugal, they also do some other like soups or stews or sausages that have pig's blood in them. And I can say that's something that I don't find as appetizing, and probably right kind of on that same level as horse, where not quite for me. Totally respect, and if you love it and enjoy it, then hey, that's great. Good for you. Just, I don't think it's quite my thing. It might take me a bit of time to get used to, like say, I mean, maybe not that much, just a lifetime or 2 or 3. Yeah, no, not for me. But I can say I was able to find some salame here that I have liked. And it's funny because in Italy, the names of what things are called in Italy versus here for kind of a similar thing. Like, for example, salame Milanese, Milan style salame. I found something here which was similar, but they called it salame Napoli, like Naples salami. And that was something I wasn't familiar or hadn't really encountered in Italy so much, but it was a similar idea. But it was more in the States of what I would call a Genoa salami. So those are just those little things. It doesn't matter where in the world you go, they will call things that might be the same thing by a different name. Even some of the sausages here, I can't say I could totally get on board with that, but the one thing, and there are many things here in Portugal that I love when it comes to food, but probably my absolute favorite thing is frango piripiri, frango com molho piripiri, chicken frango. And piripiri is like a pepper sauce or pepper oil, hot pepper oil, a chili oil. It is so good. And this is kind of getting back to what I was talking about before, about how the Portuguese have been around the world. And you see some of these influences on what they eat today. And this piripiri, as far as I'm aware, is actually a pepper or a chili that originally came from Africa and then took Italy. I keep doing this since I've been here, saying Italy for Portugal and Portugal for Italy, but that has become a part of Portuguese cuisine. And you just go to the store and you get this African chili just as a regular condiment, kind of like how ketchup, I guess, originally was based on an Asian shrimp sauce of some sort, if I'm not mistaken. it's just kind of a normal thing, just part of the culinary tradition that people have now. And this chicken, they basically butterfly it open and just slather it on. It is out of this world. It's a rotisserie style, so hard to get better. And then they do meats with rice, and you can see a little bit of where Brazil got some of their tradition and their style of food. Of course, it's evolved and become something a bit different, but yeah, I can definitely say I'm a fan. Also, as somebody who enjoys Brazilian food, to be in a country where picanha is known what it is, this specific cut of meat, I think it's top round steak or something like that. I'm not sure, but whatever it is, this special piece of meat, and to be able to go to a store and just simply ask for it, and it's not like this crazy thing like, what is this guy talking about? Because even if I were to translate in English and ask for it, I've gone to butchers in different countries and they're like, what? Why would you want that? Or that like always becomes a big discussion. But here, if I want it, I just go get it. It's easy. It's simple. It's not like a thing that you have to fight for. And on that topic, I also have to say that the quality of meat here has been really good. I've been very surprised by that. And even better, I can say significantly better than even some of the best meat that I've ever had in Italy. Italy does have some good meat, but you do find a mix of really good and really not so good. Even one place that I know of in Rovigo, the guy stopped ordering Italian meat because he tried different suppliers from around the country. He tried a French supplier, but he just couldn't get any good meat. And this has been an experience that I've had in various places where the local meat just wasn't fantastic. And so this guy in particular that I'm talking about, he ends up now getting his beef from Ireland because it was just that good. But I can just say the regular meat that I've tried here has all been fantastic. I've yet to had a negative experience with beef in this country, and that's saying something. But in Portugal, something that they're really into is fish. Like how in Italy you would go to the supermarket and you'd have a huge pasta aisle or a section of just pasta. Here in Portugal, and I'll take a video of this sometime. I took a video, or so I thought, but I pulled an old person move where I hit the record button to stop the video, and then I started it again as soon as I wanted to stop recording. Senior moment, and I'm barely 30. Okay, 30 and a half, but still. Too early for pulling those kind of moves. But you will have this whole huge area of fish, fresh fish, frozen fish, salted cod, all the different types of salted cod. And granted, yeah, you can get that in Italy as well. But here, this is the place, this is the country for salted cod. They have practically a recipe for every day of the year. You could try something different. And it's one of those things, you either love it or hate it. And generally speaking, I really enjoy it. If you are somebody that grew up with fresh cod, though, you may not be as big of a fan of it, but personally, I enjoy both. The pastries. I've probably enjoyed those a little bit too much since I've been here, but oh my goodness, the Portuguese know what they're doing when it comes to pastries, and the prices so ridiculously cheap. I mean, I would say if we're talking about weight, which often when you go to a pastry place in Italy, even if you're buying like individual items, you'll pay by the weight overall. Here, it depends on where you're going. I've seen more that you pay by the item itself, but I would probably pay for the equivalent amount of pastry, and we're talking same kind of quality. Actually, again, maybe the Portuguese quality might be a little bit better. At least the stuff that I've had, probably half the price. Even when you go around, there are these little custard tarts that Portugal is very famous for, pastel de nata, or what they're often known by, pastéis de Belém or pastel de Belém. It's like Coca-Cola. Cola is the type of drink, but Coca-Cola is the specific one. I'm not trying to say that pastéis de Belém are Coca-Cola quality, but just to give you a rough idea that that's a specific brand from a specific bakery in Lisbon. But the overall type of custard tart is pastel de nata. Oh, so good, especially if you put a little bit of cinnamon on it, or even better yet, cinnamon and powdered sugar. Yeah. Another one of those things in Portuguese cuisine that is dangerously good. Like you will feel like you're in heaven. All of the different pastries and cakes and things here are way too good. Way too good. But to get back to what I was talking about before regarding kind of how things can be a little bit more laid back here, and even kind of tying it into the food thing, another thing that I'm not quite getting into the point that I wanted to, but this little connecting point here, that you do see a lot of these cafes where you can get these pastries around. And I was joking around with someone. I was like, no wonder why the Portuguese is so sweet, because that's all that you find around. That's all that they seem to eat. These beautiful, wonderful, sweet things. But yeah, like every cafe I go to here, or that I see, that I walk by, they all have these wonderful pastries available. In Italy, a coffee bar seemed to always really have coffee. Maybe some places, in my experience, again, this is just through my eyes, would have some pastries. But again, I just have to say from my own personal experience, they don't quite compare to what you find here. But when talking about how laid back things can be here, you do have bureaucracy, like how you have in a lot of Europe and especially Italy, but it almost feels as though there's less of it here, and that there is more flexibility when it comes to certain things, and that there's more of, I don't know quite how to put it, but that there's almost more of a relaxed attitude towards that. Maybe not everything has to be 1,000,000% perfect, but good enough. Whereas in Italy, I will say though, I did have an easier time opening up a bank account there than I have had here. In some ways, I would say moving to Portugal as an Italian is almost a little bit easier than moving to Italy as an Italian. But again, the bank account thing in Italy was much easier, and moving here to Portugal, because I'm not a Portuguese citizen, I did have to produce documents to show my income and to show what I earn, and to kind of give them that idea that I either have a job or can support myself. One or the other was basically the requirement for being as a registered European citizen here. Because yes, there is the European Union, you can move around, travel, and this and that, but there are still rules beyond that that you do have to follow. It's not that you just arrive someplace and that you just live there. You have to register if you do want to be there. But one huge difference when going through the process of settling here and making a life here, renting an apartment, I will say that's much easier in some ways here than it is in Italy. Also cheaper from the perspective of the tenant or prospective tenant. In Italy, what I found very often is that if you are going through an agency, that you will have to pay for the fee. Not only the owner of the apartment will have to pay the agent's fee, but also the tenant. So that's something to consider. But in Portugal, it was only the owner. And as a renter, it seems as though in the majority, if not all cases, the person who is going to rent the apartment, the prospective tenant, doesn't pay anything. You just move in and you make life happen. And then also regarding renting an apartment here in Portugal, for those of you who've been tuning into Not Your Average Globetrotter for some time, you'll know about the rental contracts in Italy, 3 + 2 years or 4 years + 4 years. In general, yeah, you can sometimes find something less, but those are the general terms, and 6 months of notice. But here in Portugal, you can find rental contracts that are actually like just a year long. Some things that I've seen here, I feel like are more similar to what I would see also in the United States, but also with a kind of a halfway point between Italy and the United States. Yeah, it's actually physically in between the two, not halfway, but you get what I mean. That you do find some of those longer term contracts. You can actually set up 2 years or more with an owner, but the current apartment that I'm in right now, I have a 2-year contract, and I could have had the option for a 1 year. That was actually the original agreement that we had in place, was that it was 1 year plus 1 year. But in the end, they changed things without us knowing at the last second, and kind of put us in a weird position that we had to agree to a full 2-year contract. in the end, it's not really a problem. Like, it's fine for me because I'm not planning on going anywhere in the near future anyway. But you can also find contracts that are less than a year, which to me, after living in Italy, almost sounds like completely insane. Granted, of course, again, like I said, you can find short-term rentals, but like when we're talking about that in Italy, anything over 90 days becomes complicated and becomes very expensive. I'm not saying that it's not expensive here either, but there's a lot more flexibility that I've seen here in Portugal than I have in Italy, at least in this regard. But another thing that I have seen in both countries, both in Italy and in Portugal, is that some landlords may ask for people who aren't from there for a full year's rent up front. Of course, though, also you will find other more reasonable landlords who may just ask for, like, say, 3 months, like what you might expect to pay in another part of the world, first month's, last month's, plus 1 month security. You do find that here too, but you may find another landlord who wants 6 months. It all depends on the specific apartment that you're going to. And what I've heard is that since there have been so many expats moving to Portugal, that some landlords are starting to get a little greedy, or they're starting to put in some extra protections because they know that they can get it from people who aren't from here because they don't know what the system is actually here. And these people will come in and just agree to it, not knowing. And so now there are some of these things that are starting to become expected that are kind of silly and absurd behaviors. But then there are a few little things that I won't say I find annoying, but I'm not crazy about. If you're coming from the US or Canada, this may sound absolutely absurd to you, but how expensive in comparison with Italy, internet and phone can be out here. For example, in Italy, I had a line that I was paying like €5.90 for every month, and that was, I want to say, 100 gigabytes, unlimited minutes, and 200 SMS. And then there was another offer that you can find in the country where it's now even, I think the current offer, like the current biggest package of data you can find, is €9.90 for 150 plus unlimited minutes, unlimited text, and international minutes on top. Like, crazy amount of services that you get for such a low price. But here in Portugal, it's a bit more expensive. And even what I will say is actually nice, though, is that there are a lot more options for prepaid plans, even from the main carriers here. And so the good thing about that is that you can test the different carriers and the different services available. Some of them will limit the amount of data speed that you actually have when you're using prepaid plans, but it depends. It really depends. I've been looking into this a lot recently, and thankfully I can say I've found the service provider that I think is the right one for me and the best network. It seems like it's the best network in the country. I'm not going to say the best prices, but I'm going to say it's pretty fair pricing. And so the thing, though, is that it's a lot more expensive. So my phone that I have now is, I think, 1 gigabyte or 3 gigabytes of data for every app, every whatever I need to use, plus another 5 included for specific social media apps. And that per month, I want to say, is like €17.50. So we're talking, it's more expensive, and I get a lot less. And then when we're talking about the minutes, it's like 500 or something like that. So pretty limited. But for me, I don't really even need more than 50 in a month, generally speaking. But of course, there are other plans available and other options. And at some point, I will be changing over to get more data available to me. But generally speaking, it's a bit more pricey over here. So I would say, like, if we're talking about the same type of plan that you would find between 5 and 10 euros in Italy, for the equivalent here in Portugal, maybe you would be spending between, say, 40 to 50, maybe as low as 35. So it's a significant increase. But if you're coming from the States again, or Canada, this will probably sound pretty cheap to you. Anyway, I think this is where I'm going to wrap it up. But of course, if there's anything specific about Portugal that you would like to know about or you would like to hear about, let me know in the comment section below here on YouTube. Or if you're listening to this as an audio only podcast, feel free to come on over to YouTube. People don't bite. It's a warm, wonderful community over here. Or you can reach out to me via Instagram. Let me know what it is that you're curious about, and maybe that'll help shape some of the future content that I make here about living in Portugal. Or if there are any specific comparisons between Italy and Portugal that you're interested in hearing about that I maybe haven't mentioned in this episode or previous episodes so far, let me know, and let's see if maybe something can happen in the future and including that information. Of course, again, a huge thank you to those of you who help to make content like this possible through rafaeldifuria.com/Patreon, patreon.com/rafaeldifuria. It's because of you guys that this project is able to continue. So thank you so much for helping to support this, as well as those of you who help with the shirts, mugs, onesies, and more by purchasing those. I know that a lot of you have purchased them, sent me pictures wearing them and having a lot of fun with the family, and also for the one-time donations as well. A huge thank you. Of course, as always, I'm Rafael Di Furia. Thank you for joining me again for another episode of Not Your Average Globetrotter. Stay safe and healthy out there, and I'll see you all next time. Later.